I'm going to start it up here.
All right.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey everyone, this is Mark at LeagueAthletics.com. Thanks for joining us today for our first webinar session of 2015. With me from League Athletics is Mike Skopolite. He's going to be handling our questions and our chat box. So if you're looking at your screen, probably on the right-hand side, you have a little GoToWebinar panel that's sticking out there. There's a questions box down near the bottom, and you can enter questions during the session there, and Mike will be able to respond to you via chat. And then also at the end, we'll have some time to go over some of those questions that maybe would apply to everyone, and we can kind of point them out and go through them a little bit deeper. But feel free to ask some questions there. And also, if you want to close that panel, there's a little red arrow that's in the top right there. You can close that and hide that panel so you'll be able to see everything. So without further ado, I'll jump into the demo here. First thing I'm going to do is take you through the admin section of the registration process, so you can see the setup of the registration system. Then after we've done the setup, then I'm going to jump back out and show you the end user's view, so what that registration would look like to the end user. And then finally, we'll talk about some registration reporting, how you can get the data, where you can view the data. And if we have some time, we'll talk briefly about team registrations, the differences between those and individual registrations, and then we'll follow up with some questions, question and answer session. As always, if you need to contact League Athletics, just go to our homepage, LeagueAthletics.com, click on the Contact Us option, and submit your questions there if you don't want to ask your questions here. Okay, great. So what you're looking at is my demo baseball site here. To get to the registration area, I'm going to first log in the top right corner. I'm currently logged in. Then I'm going to click on the orange admin link here, and I'm going to go over to members and then registration system. So this is how we're going to get to the actual registration program as the administrator of the website. Now on this page, you're going to get three different sections. First at the top here, you have your registration list. So this is going to be all of the registration programs that you've ever created and all open registrations. And as you create more and more registrations, you'll have a long list here, and you can decide to hide those older registrations and just view the ones that are active and open. On the right side of this list here, you have some action items, and we'll go through them eventually, but these are the action items that pertain to this list of registration programs here on the left. Scrolling down a little bit further, we have this option called a registration day pass. Now what this is it gives you as the administrator the option to enter a password that people can use to register online. Instead of having to go into their email and retrieve a password link and set up their own password, this would work well for an in-person registration where you have an internet connection and people could come up to the table, they could enter in their email address, and they could enter in this day pass that you've created, and they can start setting up their account right away. And again, that just prevents them from having to do the whole password reset and retrieval process. Now, a thing to note about this registration day pass is that it's only good for 24 hours. So if you're going to have a registration, let's say Saturday, what I would recommend doing is signing on Saturday morning, entering this day pass in, and then going ahead and submitting that and saving that. And that'll be good for until midnight on Saturday. And then if you're having it again on Sunday, again, log in Sunday morning, set up a new day pass, or just enter the same day pass and resubmit it. It'll be good till the end of the day. Now down below here we have registration instructions. Now these are the instructions that are going to appear at the top of your online registration homepage. This is what users are going to see when they first come into your registration page and they select their registration program. Now for those of you that are familiar with the registration programs page, which I'll show you here in just a minute, it lists out all of your registration programs that you currently have open. And at the top, there's a block of text or images or whatever you're placing there. And that kind of gives them the overview of the registration process, any special requirements they need from your organization, or any information you want to point out to them. And this box is where you enter that information that appears at the top of that registration homepage. Now, I'll go over to that registration homepage so we can take a look at that real quick, just so you're aware of where that appears. So you can see I have this general registration instructions with some additional information, and then I have all of my registration programs that are listed out for people to go ahead and register. And that's where that information that you enter, that's where that appears at the top of the page there. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is jump into this spring baseball registration program and go ahead and click edit here. And this is going to allow us to edit this program. And essentially it's going to show us all the options that we would have for adding a new registration. If we were going to add a brand new registration, we could click this add button and it would be completely blank and we would just set up all of the criteria. Alternatively, from year to year, you can also use the clone button. What the clone button is going to do is going to create an exact copy of the existing registration program that you have highlighted. And then all you would need to do is highlight the cloned option and click edit in order to edit that registration program and change the dates, change the settings, maybe update the costs, and you're ready to go. So you don't have to start from scratch year after year. Okay, so let's go ahead and click edit here to get started in this registration program. Okay, so inside the registration program, we have a number of tabs at the top. What we're going to do is just make our way through these different tabs to enter in the criteria for this registration program. So on the General tab here, we have the registration title. So this is what's going to appear to the end user. We also have a list position. So this is how you want these registrations to appear, what order you want them to appear in to the end user. So perhaps you want your youth or your younger age groups to appear near the top. You would change the list position, and these are just numerical values, 1 being the first position. What I might recommend is if you use these, to do them in sets of 10, so 10, 20, 30. That way, if you have to add another registration later, you can put in 11 or 12 or 13 and still place it as you need to. On the registration type, this is where we select which type of registration we're going to be hosting. This is obviously an individual program where individual members are going to register, and then you're going to place them onto teams. Alternatively, we have a team registration option, and that would allow managers of teams or coaches to register a team for an event, perhaps a tournament or a jamboree of some type. Also, we can set the open date. So this is the date that the registration is going to be open and active on your website. If this is set into the future, so for example, if this was 1/25/2015, this program would not show or not be available on your website. The open date has to be today or some day in the past in order for your registration program to be active. We can also set an early bird end date. So we have the option to set up early bird pricing, and then this is the date that that pricing will end. You can also have a late fee start date. So if you want to charge a late fee after a certain date, you would enter that date here, and then we can enter the late fees on the cost tab. And then we have the close date. So this is the date that the registration is no longer going to be visible on your site and nobody can register for it anymore. This date is going to be beyond the late fee date. It's going to be beyond the early bird date. This is going to be the last date of your registration program. Down here we have some administrative options. So test mode is going to allow you to set up the registration program and only view it if you're logged in as the administrator of the website. So in order for this to work, you would have to have the registration be open, so that it has to be today or someday in the past. The close date has to be someday in the future, and if test mode is selected, when you are logged in as the website administrator, you would be able to see the registration program. But if you're logged out, it would be hidden from public users. Another option is the invite-only option here. So this allows you to make a registration program active and available, but not shown on the website. So this is used if you wanted to just send out a quick link and invite people to register, not make it available to the general public. It's usually used in cases that I see for all-star teams or special team signups. So to use that, make sure your registration program, again, is open, and then select this box here. Now, what you can do optionally is you can enter in email addresses here, and that would prevent anyone who is not included in that list from registering in this program. So basically, any email address you enter here, that email address, they would only be able to register in this program. If they weren't included in this list, they'll be prevented from registering. One thing to note here is once you do enter the email addresses, you still have to send out the invitation link to those people. It will not automatically send it to them. So here's the direct link to this program. You would copy that, send it to those people in an email, and they would then be able to go and register on your site. We can optionally include the middle initial in the player information form, so we can require that. We can also have somebody notified automatically when somebody registers. You just plug in an email address here. You can separate them by commas, so you could have 4 or 5 different emails in here. Once somebody registers in this program, those people are going to get a notification automatically. And then we can also include background checking. So if you have an account with our partner, NCSI, the National Center for Safety Initiatives, you would just set up an account with them, let them know you're a LeagueAthletics.com customer. They would give you a group ID. You would plug that in here, and then anybody who goes through this registration process would be required to complete a background check. And this is obviously mostly used for volunteer or coach type registration programs. Okay, so I'm going to note I'm not clicking submit or go to form after each tab. I'm just going to move over to this next tab here where it says description, and this is where I'm going to enter my registration description. Now this is completely optional. You don't have to have this included, but this might be a nice place where you let the user know what they're registering for, any special requirements for this registration program, anything they need to be aware of, but just basic overview about this specific registration. Now onto the qualifications tab. So this is really the meat and potatoes of your registration. This tells the system who is eligible to register in this program that we're creating. At the top here, we have a prerequisites option. So you can actually create registration programs that must be completed or have been completed prior to somebody registering in this program. So this program is the baseball registration. We have it set up right now so that anybody registering has to first complete or have completed the member registration. So that means that when they go through the process, and I'll show this to you, that they will first complete the member registration and then they'll complete the baseball registration. Now, if the member registration was closed and they tried to register in this baseball program, it would prevent them because they hadn't already registered in that member registration program. Down here underneath of the prerequisites, we can actually tell the system to require that they have to be registered in all of the selected programs here or just any one of the selected programs. So you could have all of these different things selected here, and they would have to have been registered in all of these 4 programs in order to complete this baseball registration. Here we're going to make it open to new or existing members, so that's relative to the people that are currently in your database. New members are not included, obviously. Existing members currently have a record. And then we can also choose to open it up to males, females, or both. Down here at the date of birth range, this is important. If this is going to be a registration that includes minors or youth participants, you need to have at least the youngest and oldest date of birth included, or a low and high grade. You can't just have one. You can't just have one, the low grade and no high grade and no date of birth. If you have nothing included here, or you only have a low grade, or you only have a high grade, that will allow adults to register in that program. So if you're creating a coach's registration, you'll probably want to leave this completely blank to force adults to register. If this is a youth registration, you have to have one of these criteria filled in completely. This is actually a button here, this date of birth range. So this is a really handy tool. If you don't know what the date ranges should be for the registration program, you can actually just click on that. That will allow you to specify the ages that you have in place. So maybe they need to be between 1 and 15 for this registration as of a certain date. Submitting that will automatically create your date range there, so you don't have to kind of figure that out in your mind, because I know that's confusing for me, so I'm sure it's confusing for some of you. For the grade range, we can just enter a low and high grade here. If you're doing kindergarten, that's going to be 0. If you're doing pre-K, it's going to be a -1 here. And then we can ultimately select which school year that this applies to. Okay, so down here at the bottom, we can actually use these options to limit who is available to register here. We can do this by zip code. We can actually put zip codes here and list them out with a comma after them if we have multiple zip codes. We can actually do a certain radius to a zip code. So that's a perfect circle, a radius of where that zip code is loaded, the center of that zip code is located. And then we can also set a limit or a wait list after a certain number of participants have been reached. So right now we've got it set to wait list people after 35. So the 36th person that came in and registered here would automatically be placed on the wait list. Now, if we set it to a limit, once the 35th person had registered, the program would not be available anymore for anybody to register. They wouldn't even be able to join the wait list. If there is not a limit or there is not a wait list, just be sure to leave that entire field blank, and it wouldn't set any type of limit there. Okay, on to the cost tab. This is where you set up, obviously, the cost for the program, what it's going to cost somebody to register. Here is the base cost. So this is the base number that somebody's going to pay you. I have it set just simply at $1 here, but this could be any amount that you want. Here's where you set your early bird discount. So we talked about that early bird date over here on the general tab. That's the date that you're going to set. That says after this date, nobody's getting the early bird discount. So between your open date and that early bird date, that's where they would get this discount that you would set for your early bird discount. If you don't have a discount, just leave that early bird date blank, and you can set this discount to 0 or leave it blank. And then similarly, here's that late fee. So here's the late fee that's going to be charged after that late fee start date. So that late fee date is going to be, so the late fee is going to be charged between that late fee date and the end date of your registration program. And then if we want to charge additional, or if we want to discount additional family members, we can set those discounts up here. So you could do whole dollar amounts like 10, 5, 25, however many dollars you want to discount off of the base cost when subsequent siblings register for programs. And down here we can choose which programs these discounts apply to. So we can have all open programs, so every program that's currently active, that'll check which siblings are registered in those, or we can only specify, or we only have to specify specific programs. So maybe we only want to choose, other siblings that are also registered in baseball or softball, and that would provide a discount for us. But I'm going to leave it as all open programs for now. Down here we have a family maximum. So this is the maximum amount a family will be charged for all currently open registration programs. And that is a hard maximum. So whether you're asking for donations or you're asking for additional purchasing items, a max is a max. If they try to go over that, they will be capped at the number that you enter here. And then you have the option to allow waitlisted members to pay. So originally on this qualifications tab, we had the area set up where we could automatically place somebody on the wait list. Now, you may not want to allow them to pay because if they don't get a spot, then you're going to have to go through the process of refunding them. But you do have that option if you wanted to allow them to pay at the time of registration. You could allow them to do that. Okay, so on the payment tab, this is how we're going to specify and tell the system how we want to get paid as an organization. And you'll have two options here unless you're using a special merchant account. The two options that everyone has are the full amount only or the scheduled payments. So the full amount only, obviously, they're going to pay you at the end of the registration full amount that they owe. The schedule option allows you to create payment schedules. So this allows somebody to pay over time. Now, this doesn't automatically charge somebody. What this does, it allows you to set up a schedule or series of payments, clicking on this green button. We could title this first one as a deposit, perhaps. And we will, actually, I'm going to leave the due date here blank. And what that's going to do is require the deposit immediately right upon their registration. And I'm going to do an amount of $10 and submit that. So now we have a deposit amount of $10. It's going to be due immediately. And I'm going to actually update my cost here to be $100 so we can work through this. Then I'll add a second installment. I'm going to make this due, let's say, the end of February. And I'm going to do an amount of $30. We can also include an optional reminder message here, and I'll click submit. Now, what's going to happen for this second installment is that the people that register in this program, they're actually going to get a reminder 7 days prior to the due date, and they'll get a link in that email, and that will allow them to log back into their account and make payment. And any future installments that you have set up, they'll similarly get those additional reminders letting them know to log back in and make payment. So they will have to come back to the site to make payment, but it's a nice way to allow people to stretch those payments out over a series. And then most importantly is our final installment. So I'm going to do final payment. I'm going to put the due date at the end of March. And then the amount I'm going to leave blank here. So I'm going to leave this amount blank, and what it will do is it will automatically calculate the balance due for this member. So let's say you're asking for donations or you're asking for additional cost items during the registration process, which I'll show you in the form area. When it comes due for this final payment, it's actually going to calculate however much they've already paid, off of the total for the registration and force them to pay the remaining balance here. So that's important. One thing to note here about payment schedules is we don't support PayPal in terms of payment schedules. If you're using PayPal, you're going to need to select the full amount only. However, if you're using any other merchant account, you can go ahead and use that scheduled option. This option here where it says allow partial payments of past due, if you have a payment schedule set up and you have this option selected, if somebody doesn't pay, let's say their February balance, and they get into March and now the March balance is due, or the total amount is due for the registration program, this will actually allow them to go back and pay only the February balance, not paying the full balance in total. It doesn't allow them to enter in any amount that they would like. If you do want to allow somebody to enter any amount that they would like, you cannot have a payment schedule. So we have a schedule selected. We would delete all of these options, and we keep this box checked. Now when somebody goes in and registers and they get to the checkout page, they're actually going to have an option to type in any amount that they'd want to pay. They can pay $16.28 if they wanted to, and then they can log back in and they can keep paying against that balance whenever they'd like. Okay? Okay, so I mentioned that there were going to be 3 options here, but we only show 2 at this point. If you are using an authorized.net merchant account, you'll also have an additional option here for subscription payments. Now that will collect the payments automatically from users. Basically the way that works is you'll set up an account with authorized.net, and you can actually go to their website and set up this account. But you'll go to authorized.net, you'll set up an account, you'll have to enable something called ARB, Automated Recurring Billing. I believe it is additional cost for your authorized.net account, but I'm not totally sure on that. But once you have that set up, you'll have a subscription option, and you can tell the system how much you want to charge somebody over the course of X number of days, X number of weeks, months, what have you. So if your registration cost is, let's say, $1,000, you could charge them 4 times, and you could charge, obviously, $250 each time, and that will bill them automatically. And so you won't have to worry about them logging back in to take those payments. So that is another option for you to investigate. And if you need help with that setup or you have questions, feel free to contact us. Obviously, you can log into the support board within your site. You can send us a ticket, and we can help you with that. Okay, so down here where it says payments by check, this is where we can allow somebody to pay us manually offline. If we don't want to collect checks or cash or anything like that, we just leave these fields completely blank. But if we do have these added, somebody is not going to be forced to pay by credit card at the end of the registration process. Okay. And then ultimately you'll have your merchant accounts set up prior to setting up your registration, and you'll see those listed down below here. And you're just going to select which merchant account somebody's going to use to pay you. If you have multiple merchant accounts, like maybe you have one for boys and you have one for girls, you would select the appropriate account here. Okay, and then onto the confirmation tab. This is basically the inverse of your description tab. So this is what's shown to the user at the end of the registration, and it'll also be included in the registration confirmation email that they get at the end of the process. Okay, so you can put anything you'd like in here, like thanks for registering. Maybe you put in some links to additional documents that you'd like them to have, or anything you'd like to add to the end of the process. Okay, and then into the Advanced tab. So the Advanced tab has some additional options that aren't required, but they're nice things that that you can use. First and foremost is the category option. So if you have registrations, obviously we're using different sport types here. We're using baseball and softball as our different categories. You can actually group specific registrations into these categories. So I keep going back to the gender scenario. If you had 5 boys registrations and 5 girls registrations, you may not want to show 10 registrations on a page at one time because your users, they would have to sift through that. So you could optionally set up categories, and you can apply a category to a specific registration, and then when they go to the registration page to view the registrations, they have the option to select which category they want to view. So they can see everything, they can see just boys, they can see just girls, and selecting them would obviously only show the registrations that are in that category. Okay. These checkboxes in the middle here allow you to display certain elements on the registration page for that program. So when somebody goes to the registration page, and let's say they're looking at the baseball registration, we say, do we want to show them the base cost of the program, which we now have set up as $100. If we have that selected, it's going to say cost is $100 for this program. Similarly, do we want to show gender restrictions? So if this is a baseball registration, it'll say open to males or open to boys. If it's a youth program, open to men if it's an adult program. Okay, so those are some options you can look at showing. I typically just obviously show everything. It's easier, gives your members the information right up front. And then down here at the bottom, we have an option to, basically what this option does is it forces somebody to pay when their registration is complete. So typically you don't want to have somebody register, not pay, and then you have to go chase them down to get money, or you have to continue to remind them to pay. So what you can do here is you can actually delete people who have unpaid or who haven't paid, or you can waitlist those people who haven't paid after a certain date or a certain amount of time. Generally, I recommend choosing the session ends option. So basically, you can have waitlist unpaid after their session ends. Now, what this means is that if somebody comes in and registers for this program and they don't pay, once their web session on this website, once their session completes and they leave the site, or their session times out, they will actually automatically get placed on the wait list, and they're going to get an email automatically that tells them they've been placed on the wait list because they didn't pay. Now, if they want to pay, you're going to have to remove them from the wait list. They'd have to come back in and pay. The other option is to just delete them. So they would just be deleted from the registration. It doesn't delete their member account, but it deletes their registration and lets them know that they've been deleted for non-payment. And if they want to register, they have to go back in, re-register, and pay. Okay? So I'm going to leave that as never for now, just for demonstration purposes, but that is a nice option to use if you want to force electronic payment at the end of the process. Okay, so once we've got all of the criteria set up, then we want to go over to the supplemental form that we've created. And we can do this by clicking on the Forms tab here, or we can go down and click Submit, or we can click Go to Form. So there's a number of different ways. I'm just going to click on Form, and this is going to take me over to our supplemental form questions. So everything we just set up is the basic criteria for the program. Who's eligible, when it opens, all of that information. This is going to be your additional information that you want to collect from the users as they come through the process. So these are going to be things like what jersey size do you want, emergency contact information, any waivers or agreements that somebody would need to accept would need to be included here. Some things to note, at the top we have saved templates here. So you can actually create a template. So you could set up all of your different registration questions, and you could actually save this template for future use, or to use it into other registration programs that you're going to set up. To insert a template, you would just select which one you'd want to add to this registration, and you'd click Insert, and that would add the questions right to this registration program. If you wanted to save this current format that we have, we just click Save Current Template. We would name it whatever we'd want, and then we'd click Save Template, and that would save it to the list there. And we could use it in future registration programs. So that's a nice thing to have. Now let's talk about the questions that we have here. So these are a number of questions that we already have set up, and you can see in the brackets here we have the name of the question. That's the name that's going to be used when you download a report here. The column headings are going to be titled these things, okay? And then you're going to have the actual question after it here, after that little hyphen, so you can start seeing what you were actually asking there. Now, in order to edit these questions that you have set up, we can just highlight one and click the edit button on the right. To add a new one, we could click the add button, and obviously we could delete one by clicking the delete button. And then we have this nice little quick add feature, so if you actually know what you want to add, maybe I want to add a quick drop down, we could just go ahead and click on that drop down option there. That would allow us to go ahead and add a new question right away instead of going through the add process. Okay, so let's take a look at one of these questions. I'm going to highlight this question, and I'm going to click edit. And this is going to be a text entry question. So this question is going to be prompting the user to answer text by typing into their keyboard. Again, here's the name of that question. This isn't going to be visible to the user anywhere. This is actually just going to be used in your reporting. So use something there that you're going to remember as the admin or be able to identify. The prompt field is going to be the question that the user is going to see. So enter the name of an emergency contact for the participant. That's what they're going to see, and then they're going to see a text entry field that they have to type into. You can specify the width of this text entry field, and you can also specify how many rows are available there. So if it's enter an address or enter any allergies or something like that, you may want to give them multiple rows so they can hit that return key and start typing more information. We can make this required, so that means when they go through the process, they have to enter an answer. We can make this locked after they submit it, so once they enter an answer and they submit their registration, and if they have the opportunity to go back and edit their registration, this answer will not be able to be edited by them. It can only be edited by admins at that point. We can also make this visible only to administrators. So maybe you have a question set up where you only want administrators to fill in data. Maybe it's a special code or something you have internally. You could actually uncheck this option, and it would be hidden from the user when they go through the registration process. But later on, administrators could come in and edit this answer that could be then used in reporting. And also, you have the option to encrypt data. So if you're storing some sensitive information, maybe like a driver's license or something that you're requesting from the coach, you could encrypt it. Okay, then here we have the option for questions to be dependent on another. So maybe we only want to show this question if something else happens in the registration process. Here it's going to list out all of the questions that we have created. Something is checked, something is unchecked, all of our different radio buttons, if something is selected. So you could actually say, if radio button 1 is selected, then I want this to appear. And then, so this is going to be hidden at first, and then once somebody selects radio button 1, it would then show up on the question for them, or on the form for them. But I'm going to have this as just always being displayed for now. Here we can also set the default value. So if somebody's coming through and they're registering 1, 2, 3 different people in their family, we can actually have this set up to be set to the default of maybe the person's previous registration, perhaps another family member's registration in the same program, or you can actually specify a default value for this. And then moving down here to where it says response is, this is how we tell the system what type of response that we're expecting here. So it can be free-form text. That's what I'm leaving it as here. So this will allow somebody to type anything they'd like into that program or into that form. Or we can specify that it needs to be a date, a number, a cost item, which would be used perhaps for donations. So the question might be enter the amount you'd like to donate. They could type in a number, and that would be a cost item added to their registration total. You can also do a discount code. So you would enter your code here. Maybe it's like 10 off, and then the discount amount would be 10. So there would be a text entry field. They would enter 10 off, and then when they submit that, they would receive $10 off their registration. And then you can also do quantity multiplied by a specific price. So maybe if you're selling tickets and you say, how many tickets do you want to buy at $15 per ticket? If they enter 3 ticket. If they enter 3 and you have this set to 15, when they enter 3 into that box, then $45 would obviously show up in addition to their registration costs. So those are some nice little things that you can play around with. Down here is the include on the listing page option. So this is going to allow you to show the answers that somebody has submitted on your registration list page, which we'll talk about. So the registration list page shows basic information for everybody that's registered. If we select display only values or editable values, then when you go to that list page, you're now going to see those different columns with these answers. And I'm going to show you that in just a second here. And then optionally, you can check this box here and click submit. That's going to add this question to other open registration programs that you have, so you don't have to go through each open registration and add a question that you might have forgotten perhaps. Okay. And then when I'm done, I'm just going to click on submit to save that. Okay, so let's say we've gone through, we've entered in all of our questions here, and we want to see what this looks like. We'll just go over here on the right, and we'll click on preview. And this is going to show us what our registration form looks like. So these are all of the questions that we just created. And here was that question that we were just working on, if you're wondering what that text box looks like. But you can see we can do text boxes of varying size, required or not, based on the little red asterisk there. And then we can do things like agreements or waivers that people need to accept. We can actually allow people to upload a birth certificate or upload a picture of the member. And we can also do things like radio buttons, check boxes, and drop downs. Now, one thing I just did here on purpose was that you can see that all my radio boxes are checked and I can't deselect them. This is a pitfall here that I'd like to point out. If we go back to the registration list, here are the different radio buttons that we have included, option 1, 2, and 3. When you create radio buttons, all of your radio button names have to be the same. So we have radio button 1, 2, and 3. These should all just be radio button 1 or all just be radio button, period. So let's go ahead and edit these. So I'm going to edit this one. I'm just going to change it to be radio button. I'm going to change radio button 2. I'm just going to delete that number 2 out of there. And this, again, I'm deleting this out of the name field. And then I'm going to also delete the number 3 out of the other option here and save that. Okay, once we've done that, let's go back to preview and take a look here. We'll scroll down to my radio buttons. And there we go. Now we see we can actually choose these different options out of this group. Now, by nature, radio buttons are required, so you wouldn't be able to get past this question without actually selecting one here. And then another thing I need to point out here is the last 2 questions are actually named the same. Now, that would be great if they were radio buttons, but they aren't. As you can see it on the bottom of that form here, we've got 2 drop-down questions. Now, if somebody was to submit data for these questions, we would actually, one of these items would be hidden. We wouldn't be able to get the data for it because the database isn't sure which field to look for. So just be sure that when you create questions in your registration program that you're using unique names for the questions unless you're using radio buttons. Okay? So let me go ahead and edit this and change this. Okay, so now that I've got all of those questions set up, I'll just click Save to submit that. And now we're done. So we've got our registration program set up, and we're ready to roll. So what I'll do now is I'm going to log out of this site, and I'm going to go back through the registration program as an end user so we can actually take a look and see how that looks for them. I'll click Sign Out. And now a user would come to your home page. They would find the Register Now button. And then we'll go through the process. So here are the categories that I was talking about. When a user gets to this page, they'll see a drop-down list of categories, and they can select which one they want to register for. So here I'm looking for baseball. It's going to display only baseball registrations for me. Here's the registration description. If you were to enter something there. Here are those items that were selected on the Advanced tab, which we'd want to show to the user, base cost, who it's open to, date of birth, things of that nature. And then we'll click on Begin Registration. This page tells the user who is eligible for this program, and just to be sure that you have to be over the age of 18 to register a youth player. And we'll click continue. And then we'll get to the sign-in page. So the sign-in screen, if somebody has an account in your database already, they can enter their email address and password to sign in. If they don't know their password, they can just click forgot. They can enter their email address and they'll get a reset password. If they're not a member, so if they're a new user in your organization, they can just click on create an account, enter their email address, and it'll send them a link in order to create a password, temporary password, so they can get in and start registering. I obviously already have an account set up. So I'll enter that here and click continue. And this is going to log me into my family account here. So you can see that I'm set up here. I'm obviously ineligible for the spring registration because I'm an adult. We can add a child here because we want to register our son or daughter in a program. So I'll click add child. And this is going to ask me to enter the participant's information. And as you can see, everything is already filled in based on my information. All we really need to do is fill out some simple details about them. So I'm going to enter this person's name, verify their information. We could enter an email address for this user if it's different from ours, perhaps. Just something to note, it's not required that the youth player has an email address. Basically, any email that's sent out to a youth player is automatically going to go to their parents as well. So I would suggest only entering something here for the different email from their parent. We're going to select, this is a male participant, and we're going to give them a date of birth. And if we had entered a low and high school grade, this would actually be required, but because we didn't, it's not required to be entered. Okay. And then down here we have the option for reminders to be sent to the user. So if they want to be reminded of games and practices, selecting those options would send them an email and a text message 2 days prior and 2.5 hours prior to the event. Now, once we filled in this information, I'll just click Submit to Save. And now this gets us over into the form, that supplemental form that we were creating. And actually, because we had the prerequisite program set up, it's actually forcing me into that prerequisite program. So now this is requiring me as the adult to complete that member registration. Remember, we had prerequisites. You have to be registered in a specific program in order to get registered in that baseball program. So it looks like this process is requiring me as the adult to be registered in something. And this is a great way to get volunteers to sign up during the process. So here it's asking, would you like to volunteer? I'll say yes. I'd like to be a coach perhaps. And then I will accept any waiver. And then I'll submit. Now that I've completed that, now I can complete the baseball registration for my son. And here is that specific registration form that we were working on. So let's go ahead and enter some information here. The name of emergency contact. Okay, so I'm just filling out basic information based on the questions that are asked of me, and these are all text entry fields here. Down here we have an agreement box, so in order to continue I have to accept this because it's required. Now, optionally I could upload the user's birth certificate, or I could upload their picture, but because they're not required, I'm not going to do that, but you could make those required in order to force somebody to do that. Then I'm going to select one of these options. We could enter a donation amount. Maybe I'll do $5 donation. And then we can have some additional options here. So do I want my shirt to be customized? I'll say no. And what color do I want it to be? I want my shirt to be blue. And then we'll submit this. Oh, my discount code is incorrect. I'm sorry about that. I changed my registration question to be a discount code. Real quick, I'll modify that. So basically what I've done is when I was showing you how to edit those questions, I changed one of my questions to be a discount code when it should be free-form text. So that's what I had set there. So I'll change this to free-form text. And I'll save that. Okay, I apologize about that. Let me go ahead and enter my information again here. Okay, great. So I've got everything filled out. I can go ahead and click submit. Oh, I still didn't do that. 1 second here. It's keeping that in there, I guess, because I have data entered. There we go. Okay. Teachable moments. Okay, so let's enter this information one more time. And I'll click submit. Now that'll complete the registration process of getting somebody registered in the program. And now what this is going to show is the total cost for the program and any options that we've included here. So the cost for this program is going to be $95, base cost of $100, plus $5 for that donation amount that I made, minus $10 for one of our questions we had customized to discount somebody a specific amount. And then down here it shows me my family total. Any other registrations that I'm currently involved in and what those totals would be. And now from here, I can do a couple of different things. I can click on Register Another. This will take me back to the beginning of the process where I can add a new child and register them in a different program. Or I can go ahead and just click Pay Now. If I click Pay Now, it's going to take me into the credit card payment screen, and I would be able to go ahead and pay for my registration. Okay. Down here, if we scroll down to the bottom, we can actually go back and edit some of our information here if we'd like. So if I didn't like one of my answers here, I can click Edit and modify my form. And then we show any agreements or waivers that somebody would have agreed to. And then finally, I'll go ahead and click Back to Registration. So now what I'm going to do, we just went through the end user's process, the end user, how the end user sees it on your website. What I'm going to do is go back in as an administrator now and show you some of the reporting capabilities of the registration process. Okay, so I'm going to go to Admin, Members, and then Registration System. So we were working on spring baseball, and so basically we have people registered, and we need to get data now. We need to figure out who's registered, how much they've paid, what jerseys they want, all those different things. So in order to do this, we want to highlight our program, and we can go ahead and click the List button here. This is actually going to show us a list of registrations for this baseball program. So currently I have 2 people registered. I'm showing their names, some basic information about them, how much it cost them to register, and how much they've paid. Now, if you were accepting cash or check, you could actually click on this little green button, and this would show a pop-up here, and you could actually enter an amount received by a check. So maybe this person paid me $95 via check or cash. I'll enter that in there and click Submit. It actually updates that person as being paid, and now we've received $95. Over here are some of those additional options that I was talking about that we can include on the listing page when we edited those that form question. So if we want to show editable values, or if we want to show just the values that somebody's entered, these things over here are typically not shown on the registration page. But if we select that option, you can actually see them right here on the list page. And if you had editable values, you can actually modify these things. So if somebody had selected no, or they wanted to be yes, you could change these things for them within this page here and just click Submit to save those things. and you wouldn't have to go back and edit each individual registration. So that's a nice thing to keep in mind there. You can also perform some actions on these users using this option at the bottom of the page. So perhaps I wanted to email all of these people. I would select the checkbox on the left side of the screen and then use email checked. And that would allow me to create or compose an email to these people. So there's also some different options there. You can transfer people to a different program. So if they registered in the wrong one, you can transfer them to the correct one. You can add amounts to their registration. So if you need to upcharge somebody on a registration, you can add an amount to them as well. Okay? So there's some different options there that you can investigate. Now, another thing you'll probably want to get is a downloaded report of all of the data, because you might want to pass it along to somebody, or you might want to manipulate it offline somehow. So highlighting this and clicking download would take us into the page that allows us to create a custom report. So here we can choose a report that we've already saved. We can actually save this report as something. And then down here at the bottom, we can choose which columns we want to include in this report. So over on the left here are all the columns that are available to us. All of the members' information, their parents' information, all the custom questions that we've asked. On the right are all of the questions that we want to include in the report. So if this is just going to be a player report and we don't want any of the guardian information, perhaps we can highlight all of that. Let's move it out of there. So just remove it. Maybe we don't want any of this information. Maybe we want to move this stuff to the top. Maybe we want to move this stuff down to the bottom. However we want to organize this report. Once we've got it organized in such a way that we like, then we can come up here, we can type in a name, and we can click Save and Download. And when we do that, it's automatically going to generate that report. It's going to download all of the information that we just requested for. Let's go ahead and open this real quick. So here's my Excel report. Here's all of the information that we requested in the order that we requested it, and we can use this for any type of reporting offline. Okay, and then we have a couple of other options on this page here. We have the option to assign members. So this is used for drag and drop rostering. So we'll click on Assign. And what this does is it lists out all the teams that we have on the left, and then it lists out all of the members that are eligible to be assigned on the right. So if this person belonged to, let's say, the Diamondbacks, we could grab this person, we could drag them over here, drop them onto the Diamondbacks. Now they're on the Diamondbacks team, and obviously you can see that they don't appear in this this list anymore. So that's a nice, easy way to go ahead and roster people as they're being registered, or even after the registration process. And then in the essence of time, I'm just going to touch on bios very quickly. Bios are a way to create player profiles. And essentially what this does is it allows you to create a template for member information. So you can see here all of the bracketed information that we have here. So when this roster or when this bio sheet is created, it dynamically fills in all of that data with the person's information that would have registered. So you don't have to create a profile page for each individual user. It'll automatically create this for them. And then once you create those bio templates, you can actually assign these to the rosters, and we can talk about that in a different session, but within each team's settings, we can apply those templates to that roster, and then clicking on a player's name in the roster would pull up their profile. So you can make things like public profiles or private profiles that only administrators could see. And that's a nice way to get registration information to your coaches who might need it the most. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, just in the essence of time, because we are 55 minutes in here, I'm going to open it up and just have Mike run through some questions here that I might not have covered, or some things that Mike, you might feel everybody would benefit from hearing.
Okay, guys, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Thank you. So I want to thank you all. A lot of excellent questions. I apologize if I didn't get to yours in a timely fashion. We did have a lot. So just a few things to mention, just to reiterate. We had some questions about the ability to transfer registrations and how that works. And one important question is if somebody were to make a change to a registration program, what would that do? So if I went in, I changed the base cost for registration, what happens?
Okay, good. Yeah, great question.
Yeah.
So basically, when somebody registers, they're registering with the current settings that you have. If I was to go in and modify this registration program and I was to change the cost, it only affects those people that register after I change that cost. So people that were already registered, their costs would not be affected. If you needed to modify those people's the previous registrants' information, you would actually do that through the list page by actually editing each individual member's registration, or you could modify it using the options at the bottom of the page here.
Okay. So one other question that just came up that would be good is, how can you view a member record? So, okay. Mark, do you want to just take us through where to get to the member record and how to see some of this information?
Sure. Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll go to the registration programs page and we'll highlight the registration where that person might be registered. And this is if you know which program that they're registered in. And we would click List. And then from here, we could see each individual member's basic information. To edit their actual specific registration, we would click Edit, and then we would click Edit Registration. This will actually bring up the registration form for that specific person, and we can modify any of the information here. We can actually even modify their costs if we needed. We can add check or cash payment down here at the bottom, and we can actually send them a confirmation email again if we wanted to. Now, this is their registration information. If we actually wanted to see their personal profile and maybe edit their contact information, we would click on Edit and then Edit Member Info. This would take us into their personal profile here. Okay. Now, another way real quick to get to this information, let's say you didn't know which program somebody was registered in, is the administrator. You would go to Admin, you would go to Members, and you would go to Lookup Members. And from here, you could search for somebody based on their name. So we were looking for Doug, perhaps. We find Doug, we can click on Doug's name to edit their information, and now we're right back into their profile. And we actually have a registration tab here that I could click on, highlight their current registration program, and click Edit. And this would allow me then to edit their registration information from this screen.
Okay. Mark, would you mind popping over to the home page? We had a question about having the Register Now button and how to get that on your site and how that works.
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, the Register Now button is going to direct somebody always to the registration home page. So if I click on this, it'll take us to this page where somebody could then begin the registration process. Now, in order to get that on your site, there's a couple of things that you have to have in place. First, you have to have that added as a widget. Over here on the right-hand side, I can click on Widgets, and then we have the Register Now button included. So in order to add that widget onto our site, if we didn't have it, we would just look for the Register Now button. We would add it over to the right side, and we could name it whatever we wanted. Now, you don't have to link it to anything. The Register Now button automatically links to that registration homepage. The other requirement in order to get this on your homepage is you have to have at least one active and open registration that isn't in test mode or isn't in an invite-only mode. So it has to be open to the public, and that would include your Register Now button here.
Okay. Well, Mark, we have 2 minutes left, and I do apologize. We have a ton of questions. I don't know if we want to go through one or two more or discuss, what we're going to do with the webinar that we just did.
Let's go through a couple more questions. If somebody isn't available, we're recording this now, so we can send it out to them. So if they have to jump off, feel free. But let's go ahead and answer just a couple of more, and then we can wrap it up.
Okay, one question that's come up is the ability to print out, a lot of organizations, Little League or Pop Warner, require printed forms so the coach can visually, verify, yes, this is who I'm looking at when they go to practice. So do you want to just maybe take a quick look at, printing out the rosters?
Sure.
In conjunction with bio sheets, that sort of thing.
Sure. Yeah, one of the best ways to do that is to use the bio sheet option. That bio sheet can be sent up in a template of your choosing. So you can modify and create any template that you want, and you can create any number of templates. So if you need this person's information that needs to be printed in a certain way, you could come in here and modify this template, or you could create a brand new template and format it as you'd like. And then up at the top here, you could click on Generate. When you generate that, it's actually going to create those bio sheets with the person's information that you can then print, you can hand out to the people that require that information. Is that sufficient, Mike, or do you need download?
I think that's good. I think that's good. you can just print from that form, and it'll give you what you're looking for.
Yep.
One other question is it possible to have a registration program that doesn't cost anything?
Sure.
And what's an example of when you would use that?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You can set your base costs in a registration program to be $0. Like you saw in my member registration program, where it was asking the parent of the player to actually sign up for a volunteer position. That might be a great way to use a registration that doesn't cost anything. You may also have a coach's registration where you just have coaches signing up because you want to gauge interest. You wouldn't want to charge them anything, perhaps, so you could set that as a $0 amount.
Excellent. One more, and that is when it comes to having to refund a registration, what's the process for that, and
Sure.
Is it something that can be done from within the site?
Okay. Yep. Certainly. Okay. So if you're, it depends on your merchant account that you're using. So if you're collecting credit cards online and you're using PayPal, Sage, or Authorize.net, the process for that is to first refund the person through your merchant account. Because you've collected the money right so far, and we haven't controlled the money or touched the money at that point, and you have it, you have to refund that person directly. So the first step would be to go into your merchant account, and you would refund that person electronically. The second step would be to go into your registration system. So we go in and list the registration program. Let's say this person perhaps paid us via credit card and we need to credit them back. We would actually add a negative amount to their registration because we want to, in our system, we want to log that we actually paid this money out to somebody. So we add a negative payment. So now this person has paid $0. And then the final step in the process is basically to unregister this user from the registration because they are not registered anymore. So we just remove this person's registration. They've been refunded. And now whenever we go and look at our transaction reporting, we'll have both this debit and this credit in there. They paid money, but we also refunded money, so everything will even out. I should note that if you're using the Dwala and the Nimbus option, because somebody is paying through League Athletics and we are transferring the money to you, you would actually have to refund them offline using a check or cash payment to them, and then you'd go through the same process of entering in a negative amount for them and then unregistering the user.
Great. And one final question, just regarding scholarships and how you would record a credit to someone who's registered.
Okay, sure. So there's a couple ways to do that. First, you could just register the person manually as the administrator if you wanted. The other option would just be to have the person register online. When they get to the final payment screen, they would just bail out of the registration, essentially completing the registration without paying. Then you as the administrator would log back in. You would go to this list page that we're currently on. You would edit their registration, and you would set their cost to $0. So basically, they owe $0, they've paid $0, they're completely let's see, I didn't have something answered here. They owed $0, they paid $0, now they're completely registered and they're not going to have to pay anything in the future. Okay? Okay, so because we're a little bit over here, a couple of minutes, what we're doing is we're recording this session, so we're going to convert it over and get it uploaded onto our YouTube channel for you to review and to send over to your members and anybody who needs help with the registration process. So it could be something that you circulate internally within your organization. I know we didn't get to everybody's questions, but feel free to contact us through a support ticket. So log into your site, go to that admin link, go to support, and then contact support. You can send a support ticket directly to us, or if you want to give us a phone call, we're certainly here to help. Again, I want to thank everybody for taking the time to be with us today and go over the registration information. We will have another session on a different subject next month. So look for an email for that webinar, and just thanks again, and hope you have a great day.